It was a sunny summer afternoon, July 3rd, 2010. I thought, what a great day for a horseback ride, and today I'm going to take my horse, Joey, out for a ride in the fields. In the 6 years he and I had been together, we spent almost all our time riding in the ring, training for dressage. But today was going to be a fun, relaxing ride. I went out to the barn and I got him ready, and I set up a mounting block in a place that we had never got on before. I brought him out and lined him up, and all of a sudden I saw his ears flatten and his eyes got wide, and he turned around to look at me as if to say, "Mom, what are you doing? This is not the place we get on. I don't like it." I patted his neck and I said, "Joey, it'll be fine. It'll just be so fun. It's easy to get to the field from here." I put my left foot in the stirrup and I swung my right leg over, and he trotted off and I fell. My first thought was, oh my God, he's running loose and his reins are long and loose. And my second thought was, wow, my arm hurts. And I looked down to see a huge gash in my right forearm with a lot of blood. I found my trainer. She gave me a towel, got Joey back in the stall, and we got in the car and we went to urgent care. The next few hours are a blur. I know there was an ambulance, there was pain meds, there were lots of questions. And then I was in a hospital bed, and all I could think was, oh my God, my life has just come to a screeching halt. I was worried about Joey, I was worried about my pets at home and my work and my health. Just how do you go from everything is great to this? Just then, the orthopedic surgeon came in, and he said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Shulman. I hear you fell off your horse." And I nodded at him very miserably. And he said, "Well, I just want you to know I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you can ride again." What a gift. They were really worried about the gash in my arm. My elbow is shattered beyond recognition, but Dr. Shulman and his team put it together with screws, and they took some ligaments from my arm and made a little network to hold it together. But when you fall on a gravel road in a horse farm, there's lots of opportunities for nasty infections. And so every day for 5 days, they took me into surgery to try to clean out the wound, and of course I was pumped full of antibiotics. At the end of a week, with fingers crossed, they sent me home. Within 24 hours, I was sicker than ever. Another ambulance, another hospital room. Now this hospital room was an isolation room at the end of a corridor in a secluded corner. And in front of the room was an anteroom piled high with protective paper clothing. And anybody who came in had to get dressed from head to toe. They didn't want me to give my infection to anybody else, and they didn't want anybody else to bring in another infection for me. The days dragged. There were times when I'd look at the clock and think, how can I be lying here for so many hours and not even care? One day there was commotion in the anteroom, and all of a sudden 3 friends of mine came in. They were dressed from head to toe in the protective paper clothing, and they were my riding friends. They made themselves at home in our room, and we started to talk. Horses, dressage tests, hot weather, trainers, gossip. And then Dr. Shulman came in. And as one voice, my 3 friends looked at him and said, "Doctor, is Susan going to be able to ride again?" And he said, "That's what I do. I get people back to doing what they love." Finally, they decided that I could go home. They gave me 2 gifts before I left the hospital. One was a PICC line in my upper left arm so that I could administer IV antibiotics to myself. And the other was a cast, concrete, rock hard, from palm to shoulder. Now, up till then, I'd been in a soft cast so that they could monitor the wound. But now, as I'm going home, and Dr. Shulman says, "Susan, this cast will help your elbow heal." The days were also long and tiring at home. I was fatigued. I had very little appetite. I had fuzzy antibiotic brain. But worse than everything was my anguish. I kept replaying that moment in front of the mounting block when Joey was telling me I don't want to do this, and I did it anyway. And I was like, what was I thinking? And I hoped so much that the bond that I had with this beautiful, wonderful horse had not been irreparably broken. Finally, I got the cast off, and Dr. Shulman looked at my arm and he said, "Oh, that looks pretty good, now bend." And I'm like, bend, okay. Bend, bend, as if mind over matter would make this elbow bend. It did not. But he said, "That's what I expected. Here's a prescription for PT. Go as much as you can." My first stop after I got my cast off was to the barn. I had not been there since I fell. As I drove up, my heart was pounding. I got to the door and I took one step in, and I hear down the aisle, I hear this noise that's like, hoo hoo hoo, hoo hoo hoo. That was Joey's knicker, specially for me. I ran to the stall and I threw my arms around him. Oh, it just felt so good. And he looked down at me with his big, brown, soulful eye, as if to say, "Mom, I'm so sorry. I just got so scared that day, but I didn't want you to get hurt." And I looked up at him into his brown, soulful eye, and I said, "No, Joey, it was my fault. You did tell me, and I didn't pay attention. I am so sorry." And at that moment, he let out this breath he had been holding, and he leaned into me, and I thought, we do still have our bond. I went to PT 4 times a week. Elastic bands, weights, arm bicycle, and brutal manipulations by my physical therapist. Finally, she would measure my arm, the angle every so often, and one day she said, "Susan, it's 90 degrees. And I thought, 90 degrees? I can ride again. So I called my trainer and we made a date for me to get back on Joey for the first time. We got him ready and we went into the safe place where we always mounted, and she held him. And I put my left foot in the stirrup and I swung my right leg over the saddle, and I did settle down. We only rode 20 minutes that day, but it was the best walk, trot, and canter ever. After that, it was PT and riding, PT and riding. I'd go to PT, and afterwards, she would encase my arm and shoulder in ice, and I'd lie on the table, and with my left hand, I would trace the figures of the musical freestyle as I would hear the music in my head. Before I had gotten hurt, we had qualified for a year-end championship show in freestyle. And in all my years of riding, I had never been to a championship show before. By that time, I was determined that we were going to go. The weekend of the show was magical. Joey and I got all dressed up and we went to ride our freestyle. And the minute that I signaled for the music, he puffed up and he moved elegantly into the ring. And I felt like I was piloting a magic carpet. We did well enough to win 9th place out of 13. But what was really exciting is that at these qualifying shows, at these year-end shows, they give ribbons to 10th place. And the thing about getting a ribbon is that you get to participate in a mounted ribbon ceremony. So the time comes, we get back dressed up again, and we go to the staging area, and they put this big, beautiful, it's really sort of an ugly gray, but a beautiful ribbon around Joey's neck. And they say, enter the tunnel, and when I say go, you walk in. And it was 3, 2, 1, go. And I hear overhead, and now please welcome in 9th place, Susan Trivers riding her Frisian Autofan de Greitpliets, Joey's show name. And we took a step in, and then we did our victory lap. A couple of weeks later, I went to see Dr. Shulman for my last checkup. I brought the ribbon with me, and he was really so happy for me. It was great. And then he said, well, let's see how you're doing. Will you do a couple of movements for me? I was like, sure. He said, put your arms out, and now rotate. And he's like, wow, that's really great. Would you mind if I bring in a young doctor that's working with me and let him take a look? It's like, of course. So he goes and gets this young doc, and he comes in and he says, I'm going to ask her to do some movements, and I want you to tell me what procedures I did. Now, I was wearing long sleeves, and this doctor had not seen my medical chart. So then Dr. Shulman says, okay, put your arms out, now rotate. And the young doc says, oh, that was so-and-so. Like he was annoyed that he was being questioned about this. And Dr. Shulman says, well, it was so-and-so, but it was also this and that and such and 10 other things that I could never remember. And the young doc's jaw dropped. It's like, no one gets full range of motion with those procedures. Whereupon Dr. Shulman looked at him and he looked at me and he said, no matter the skill of the surgeon or the effectiveness of the physical therapist, it is the attitude of the patient that makes all the difference. Thank you.